You're all set.
All right, so let's call the regular scheduled meeting of the County Commissioners. It is 5:59 on May 20th. And we'll call this meeting to order. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I will note that all commissioners are present. Commissioner Michaels is by Zoom. Number 4 on our agenda tonight is, or number 5 is number 4 is the reading of the minutes or the waiver of the reading of the minutes for May 6th, 2020. Motion on that?
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
regarding the roll call for the meeting of May 6th, I see that Commissioner Roy is listed as party, but as you recall, he was on the video with us and then had not received a notification that we were meeting in person and then ran over here. So I would think we would change that and remove the tardy notation on his attendance.
I agree.
Okay, I doubt, anyone have any opposition to that? I would not expect. Okay, so let's take a vote on or do I have someone that'll make a motion to accept the minutes from the May 6th meeting with the change that Commissioner Roy was not tardy?
I move to accept the minutes of the May 6, 2020 with the aforementioned change.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Anyone opposed? I'm going to put as additional minutes in here, the minutes of the meeting. According to the charter, whenever you have an emergency meeting, that at the next meeting, you read the minutes from that emergency meeting. That would have been the meeting, that is the meeting that we just had. It's entirely up to the board. I would ask that you table the reading of those minutes until our next meeting. If you wish not to do that, that's fine. I'll slip out for a few minutes and try to get them transcribed so you have something to vote on.
Move to table.
Second.
Brian Ames, move to table.
Nice.
Any discussion or? Okay, let's take a vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm opposed based on the grounds that the charter requires it. I think it would have been better to just change the order of the agenda. Thank you. I wish the minutes reflect that. Thank you.
Would you put that in writing then, please?
Madam Chair, the bylaws do not provide a requirement for that.
Actually, they do. The chair can ask for the four motions or for statements to be put in writing, unless you want me to stop the whole meeting and write down word for word what you're saying. I can't.
No, Madam Chair, I respectfully disagree. It states that for a motion. It does not state that in the bylaws that if someone is opposed to something, it says that they may request it to be recorded.
So you're refusing to put it in writing for me?
Madam
Is that
Chair,
your
it is
statement?
not the job of commissioners.
Okay.
to record
Could you
minutes.
please reiterate your objection?
It is on the video and is available for putting together of the minutes, which is someone else's,
So you won't repeat it and you won't put it in writing. Is that your statement?
because I don't want to lose what I
Okay.
just said.
Let's go ahead with warrants, approval warrants.
I move to approve warrants 2034, 2035, 2036, and 2037. Corrections warrants 1973J and 3018J. Payroll.
Second.
Thank you. And those are combined. Any questions for our treasurer on those bills? Okay, all in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, jump right in, yes, please.
Sorry, Commissioner Kelly had a question.
Oh, no, I was just wondering where they were. I hadn't seen them yet, but they're right there.
This is the table copy, yes. I might have the email copy in my notes. Commissioner Roy, did you have a question?
I was
Oh.
voting yay.
Oh, thank you. You're moving things along for me.
How's that light in your eyes?
Are you, did you have a comment or a question?
No,
Or would you
I
like,
just-
are you
I
happy
just
for us to move forward? Okay.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That is 6-1. Okay, we do not have an MCCA report. I
Oh, I
don't,
did.
oh,
Somebody
did
said.
they meet?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't think they met this.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the big topics at MCCA is a question as to, I think, an important part of the future of the Maine County Commissioner Association, and that is that and I mentioned it a couple months ago, but it is kind of taking a step forward in that the group needs to make a decision soon. The executive director, so it's a staff of two. There's an executive director and and a, I would say a coordinator, and he's retiring, or something like that. And they have a question as to whether they should hire a lobbyist for exclusively during the legislative session, or to hire an executive director in a similar fashion as what is the status quo. My opinion is that we continue with what we've been doing. I would just like to see the executive director take a more hands-on role with the members of the association. I've never really been outreached by the executive director, and I think that there could be more there for that. It's not really he has done a good job in terms of what
One
he's been
second,
doing. Yes,
I don't want to cut you off. Are we not recording anymore? Sorry, I don't want to cut you off, it just said recording paused.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, so I was just giving a report for the Maine County Commissioner Association. The decision whether to have an executive director or hire a lobbying firm. I don't think, my preference is to continue on with the status quo with a slight deviation, which I think is really not a change in the job description, it's really just a personality thing. I don't really have a sense as to what the direction the association is going to be doing. I haven't been integral in it, but I did sort of voice my thoughts about it. I think there's probably positives either way, but I think when you hire a lobbying firm, there's maybe some loss of institutional knowledge and that sort of thing. But in a similar way, that maybe they'd be a more effective lobbyist. But the current executive director, I think, is pretty good at it. It's also a challenging job because consensus among counties is an elusive thing. So you kind of have to cast a big net and focus on where you think, where that person who's kind of an expert in the realm thinks there might be what is ripe for opportunities to help us out. So anyway, just thought I'd share that. Other than that, there's really not much going on with the MCCA. And if you guys have any thoughts about the executive director versus hiring a lobbyist, I'm happy to to hear that and add to the conversation they're having. They haven't made any decisions just yet.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
I think it would be
Sure.
best to hire a lobbyist. Once you put somebody in a position of that power, they tend to be less accessible. And when you have a private company representing you, they are far more attentive to the needs of you as a group. If they fail to meet what needs to be done, you can get another group. And that's the way that you keep them close and listening. When they cannot be let go, it's hard to keep them accountable. So I think, and especially given that the county, as counties' consensus is elusive and hard to find, it would be best if we had a group that represented us and is more responsive so that we can make sure that they are responding to the county's needs.
It just is clarify. I think that the executive director is quite responsive, but I actually feel that the lobbying firm, it is a short amount of time, and it may cost the same if not a little bit less. But then again, we'd have to pay the coordinator more money because she would be doing more work than what she does now, or maybe like a higher skill set, which she's definitely capable of doing. But the lobbyist thing, it's the legislature has a short session, and so you really, their perspective, the group MCCA, is that they're going to hire someone for that short time, and I don't think that's really, given the makeup of the organization, I think it takes more time to really figure out what the needs of the group are, and I don't think a lobbyist can really hone in on that. But the executive director has done a great job. He's good at what he does. He's a former legislator, so that's his thing. And he actively sends out very detailed emails. I'm happy to forward any of them to you about what's going on in the legislature, and they're generally quite timely as well.
Now, if my memory serves me right, the executive director was our lobbyist.
Correct.
Wasn't that-
Yes, that is
Now-
his primary role.
And
I-
you've sat through a lot of these hearings too, Sheriff. I thought there was a real uptick in our representation from years ago when we had the executive director, and then when we had this attorney that is a former legislator that became our lobbyist and now is our director.
Well, I think you're evaluating, I've worked with the group for a long time because of the jail issues. And
Yes, I am.
You're actually, and I will say, his emails and the detail he provides over issues, he should be, have kudos for that. A lot of good guidance. But what you're seeing, what you're actually talking about is the individual in the position, not so much the position.
Yes.
I look at it, we went through the same thing on the Sheriff's Association. I'll leave it at that, but I think when you have an executive director, they're or the commissioner's employee to work at your charge. It's good to have them keeping you updated in issues, getting consensus with national associations, and polling legislatures. He was very good at it because he was a former legislator. What the flaw with the individual, I thought, when you would talk, you were listening to a politician. It was a good reason. I don't care for the politics of things like that. I just like straightforward, cut through the chase. But as far as how he built things up, he was really good at it. So when you look at the executive director, like we have with the Sheriff's Association, they become the association's employee. And a lot of this, as you know, we've been dealing with the jail funding thing since you and I both started in 2015, 5 years later. So the historical thing does play into effect. We've hired, on the Sheriff's Association, as comparison, an advocate attorney in the past. It can get costly, and they're paying you for what they want you to say, rather than giving you, like an executive director, the information to make your own decisions. So, but he has been very good. He's been very helpful, even for the Sheriff's Association, with the information he comes up with. If that is kind of what you're asking.
It's I think it comes down to the fact the individual and their presentation skills and
Yeah, I mean, on that, part of it is, I feel like as the group kind of needs to decide what, if we're going to continue with an executive director, what is their targeted skill set? Because the position is really sort of a, in my eyes, it's a bit of a unicorn job, because you need to be good at everything, and there are some things that take pretty specific skill sets. Like, you know, I really want the next executive director to be more involved with the individual members and solicit feedback and that sort of thing. But at the same time, we also want someone who can effectively lobby, and you know, right now that is what they value. But it has created a little bit of rifts, not doing the more consensus building work that is somewhat lacking right now. So, you know, we may not find the unicorn, but somewhere in the middle, I think, is really the best way to go.
What's your time frame when you have to vote on this at your next meeting, or do you have a couple months?
I think there's a couple months. The way they did the finances, which was brought up at the annual meeting, was that they were going to leave the seat vacant for a number of months in terms of trying to mitigate the financial stress that the organization has kind of endured lately. They used to have, I think, bigger reserves or something, and now they don't. You see, they did raise their fees a modest amount, and but they've also been just being a lot more active and probably more effective for it. But yeah, they're going to leave the seat vacant for some time, so they're not going to jump right on it. They're going to give it a little bit of time. So I expect to see a decision in 3 months. So there's a committee, and they're slow walking it to just try to make sure that everyone has their opinions voiced, and maybe to see if there's a unicorn out there that wants the job. I'm not certain, but just leaving it open for now.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Central Maine Workforce?
I don't have anything at this time, Madam Chairman.
And let's go to the treasurer's report.
Okay. For April, all departments within budget. We were at 2.5 million in the TAN, which is right in line with last year. And I did a kind of a comparison in revenues, because revenues is what I'm really worried about, from last April to this April, just to see what the differences would be. Deeds is actually up from last year, so that was good news. Probate, I don't have all the information yet, so I'm unable to kind of see. It looks like it's going to be down, but I'm not sure how much yet. Civil is down. They haven't been running at full capacity, so that, you know, I kind of expected that. So far, I mean, it really doesn't look as bad as I was anticipating. But I will do the same analysis for May. Things are starting to pick back up a little bit as far as civil's doing more work. And we're opening to the public on June 1st. We did notice this week there was an increase in the amount of checks deposited that we were depositing and the amount. So it's slowly picking back up already. So I'm really encouraged by that. But once I do it again for May, I'm hoping next month we'll have a clearer picture of where we're going to end up. That's what I have.
And the treasurer's report requires a vote. Do I hear a motion to accept the treasurer's report?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Sandberry and Terry Cowan. Okay, any questions for the treasurer?
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Question, I see gas at, for jail at $18,989. I assume it's natural gas, or?
That's the heating, yeah.
Okay, all right. And then, a little confused with patrol overtime on the jail. Are we like filling in staff, Sheriff Sampson?
Well, we have some individuals that are cross-trained.
Okay,
So if somebody that's in the corrections budget works patrol shift,
okay,
it is the treasurer's office. We did it actually 2015-16, we changed it. So doesn't screw up the payroll as bad as it was before. And the proper department gets billed or pays the expense of the overtime.
Okay,
So I can't speak to exactly what you're seeing in the line, but there's several individuals that qualify to work patrol, that work in corrections budgets.
all right.
So they're paid maybe through corrections and reimbursed through patrol, or somehow that's,
So it's basically just shifting money from one account to another, or probably Treasurer Proctor will say that's not how you say it.
I think what happens
But
is,
it's basically,
they-
it's not a net loss or anything.
no, they put in their
I was trying to
overtime, the
understand.
jail pays, so there's a line for, that's where the overtime comes from. The patrol division reimburses the corrections division or the civil division, because the same thing happens with civil.
All right, thank you, that's what I needed to hear. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments on the treasurer's report?
Madam Chair, just one other question, if I may. Insurance, building, and contents, the last page of the line items listed out, 9,223. Is that for, I'm just kind of confused with is that like just a monthly or quarterly?
Are you in the, what are you,
It's
I'm not sure what
just
you're looking
before
at.
your spreadsheet, Treasurer Proctor. It's the last page with all the written line items
Yeah,
on the jail
yeah.
account.
That's, that, we do, pay those quarterly,
Okay,
actually.
okay, thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of accepting the treasurer's report? Opposed? I can't, John Michaels, was that a yes, or I am assuming that's a yes, sir?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And the administrator's report is on the last page of your packet for you to review. Our Register of Probate, Tom Reynolds is here. Did you have anything you want to say, or are you just sitting in and relaxing?
Just, no, happy to be here. Nothing to really report. Obviously, our numbers are going to be down. We're not providing any passport application service, and that definitely is an impact. But as I believe that Judge Dubois had mentioned last meeting, that staff is available via telephone technology and whatnot to serve the needs of the public.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the sheriff is also present. Did you have anything you wanted to weigh in on or update?
I'm only here in support of the treasurer.
That's good
To
of
follow
you.
up on Tom, when she mentioned, we are aware of civil process, as you're aware, a lot of, because the courts were closed, they couldn't do, we did a lot of house cleaning, rebuilding. The last monthly report, I get a message, we broke a record, and I had to inform the civil supervisor that usually when you talk about breaking records, it's in the positive. So it was an all-time low month. We've written to basically whoever does that, the judicial meeting with defense counsel about civil process, and we let them know beyond the information they were looking for. We have a lot of clients and a lot of walk-ins and a lot of phone calls that are looking to pick back up on civil service. And unfortunately, well, I don't know if you read the article in the paper today, not today, but the other day about civil process in Maine. We kind of expected that. So we are expecting not only our normal business to resume, but probably process related to family matters will be added on. Do I think we'll hit the mark for the year? Probably not. Am I happy to hear that Tina's beating her mark? Very. But I know she can't carry all of us. We just know there will probably be an issue hitting the mark, and we're hoping to recover somewhat over the next few months when this court allows us to go forward with processes. You can't serve papers if you can't give dates. It is pretty much, we've still been serving, but explaining you may have to get a new court date where some agencies shut it down altogether. We still had a lot of people we were, for lack of a better term, chasing. So we had a grouping of papers we were still attempting to serve. We still had judge-ordered evictions that had started long before the coronavirus. Some, November of last year, so when the governor put that order out, it created some confusion. but we had 3 or 4 of those that had been agreed to January, February. So there was things for them to do, but we also did things to observe social distancing, to protect them, splitting them up, so also having them available because they can work control of the jail if needed. So we looked out for their safety as well. So that's really about all I can say in regards to keeping it in line with what you guys are talking about tonight.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
A question about Dr. Sampson. When you're speaking of serving more papers, are you alluding mainly to more divorces, or what exactly is this causing?
Well, if you read the newspaper and the contact, like attorneys that assist people with these things, and some of the legal aids out there that will help people with civil processes, what we're seeing for calls when it comes into custodial issues, I think you'll have a lot of civil processes that relate to custody issues, contempt of court issues, due to custody issues, divorces that pick up in evictions, but a lot of family matters type things, because we're getting the calls, and if you read in the Sunday paper, they did a whole story on it. A lot of legal aids and attorneys' offices are also fielding calls related to the same thing. So that would suggest that there'll be civil services.
So this is from the COVID crisis?
Well, yes. Well, during the crisis, people handle things differently. And sometimes it could be a violation of an existing order, and sometimes it could be justifiable. But every action can get a reaction. Some of those reactions, the remedy is to, an order of contempt, which may involve a civil service or something of that nature, and may relate to 2 people locked up together for a long time decide that they don't want to be locked up together forever, so that could change their marital status.
So like cabin issues, so to speak, I think you alluded to that earlier on.
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, we could kind of, when you work with people, you discover a lot of things about human nature. So there'll be a lot of babies born next year, but there'll be a lot of divorces as well. Not to sound crass, but unfortunately, that's just something that was predictable. So the article in the paper this weekend wasn't a complete surprise.
Yeah, so the lockdown kind of had some of these effects.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Medora.
Sheriff, while you were standing, I thought maybe you'd comment about what's been happening with the jail, and I was also curious about what transport's been doing, since there hasn't really been I'm assuming there hasn't been much for transportation, and also curious, the third one, about how you see the future of the jail in the next few months once the court, once all those warrants that had been rescinded come back out, like such as for not having paid fines and that sort of thing. People, and it seems like we'd be anticipating the jail would be full to the brim again in the near future if once all that stuff catches back up that was put on hold.
Mind if I sit so I give you a quick rundown and keep focused?
Okay.
In regards to transport, as you're aware, we added a position. That person was left in the jail on the line. They understood, so there's been a delay in transfer there. One individual needed to complete their patrol training, FTO, so we're putting them through that process. That left 3 remaining. One was out on family leave, back now. The other 3 alternated their schedules, social distancing, also in case somebody came into the facility with the virus, we have backup staff available to work 5 days. Working with the Andy Robinson in the district attorney's office, I actually spoke to him this morning, and I don't know if you read the article in the paper a couple weeks ago. He did a lot of things, him and his office did a lot of things to help out when it came into helping us lower our headcount. We asked for cooperation with a lot of law enforcement agents, all the law enforcement agencies in the county, which we seem to get. But Andy started out with reviewing who was in-house and revising their bails, which helped lower in our headcount. He also is screening every arrest that comes in that's not an obvious, needs detention, like a domestic violence is going to come in and we're going to accept them. But another charge, we call the on-call DA, they'll evaluate. At the same time, instead of doing court 3 days a week, transport was doing court 5 days a week, thanks to the district attorney in the courts. They were handling all arrests that did come in this facility first thing in the morning, and they were doing it through video. So we had to buy some connections to do that, installed it in our visit room through a laptop, and we have video conferencing now there. So they were doing court daily, but one at a time for security reasons. So basically their mornings were tied up doing that. So that was what they were occupied doing. We had agreements with 3 counties. If we got somebody on their warrant, we'd hold them. And if they got somebody on ours, they'd hold ours, because they could do the video conferencing to handle their bail issues. A lot of we'll say the northern counties didn't want to participate in that, so they were still traveling doing that. So they were kept busy. Our head count this morning, right now when I left, is 87. 7 of those inmates are sentenced to Maine Department of Corrections. Periods of time vary from 14 months to, I think one is over 6 years. But DOC put out a general order, executive order number 54 Friday evening, stating they would not accept any more prisoners. They did grant the authority of the Commissioner of Corrections to authorize, but it had to be of, and I sent, and I will continue to send everybody that goes through the process, we've got this individual to you, just to get the denial to send them. He viewed the first five as non-emergent circumstances. And I guess we need to define what emergence is. But we've had ongoing communications with the commissioner. The Sheriff's Association is going to have a conference call Friday morning. He alluded to, until the civil order of emergency expires, that was how they'd like to do it. And speaking with Andy this morning and sending his staff an email, we appreciate his efforts, his office efforts, defense counsel's efforts, the court's efforts in having disposition hearings and letting people go through their process. And we encourage them, regardless of whether or not they're going to be transferred to DOC, to continue that for a lot of reasons. One is sooner or later they will be transferred. 2 is there's something about the psychological well-being of the inmate as far as knowing their destiny. When they sit here not knowing if it's going to be 5 years, 20 years, or 2 months, creates some uncertainty. And with this time, it's a hard population to manage. So not only is it good for them, it's good for us from a management perspective. They also, as in their sentence, are qualified for more programming. And if they get the opportunity to go to DOC, we can transfer them. And state time and good time calculation is different from our time. So it is a priority to get them there or to have them go through their disposition hearings for a number of reasons. God forbid one of them have a heart attack this evening, there'd be medical expenses involved. We would hope that the state would at least pay for those expenses rather than put it on the local burden. We're in hopes, ideally, of getting them out to the prisons, but that's not going to work. I'll continue to send them the names, so at least they have them and know what they're looking at. The number in a week's time went from, I think, a dozen statewide sentenced inmates to the other day when I got the denial, because I was the first sheriff to send out the request to transfer mine, because that's what the executive order said I could do. So and they thought it was funny that I did that, and I said, wow, it said you could. Well, anyway, the number from the about a dozen originally to Tuesday morning went up to 40-something statewide. So that number is going to continue to grow. While I don't like having them here, I do like the fact of their cases are resolved, and now the confusion is who calculates the state time. Because by our calculations, one of their prisoners is due to get out in October. They are more generous with their good time. Obviously we can't operate the facility like we've been operating forever. I think you might have seen a piece in the Sun Journal where we talked about some of the changes that were made. It's not realistic to have a district attorney on call just for those reasons, to evaluate every arrest every night. It's great that they're doing it now, but it's not a long-term solution that's cost-effective. So there'll come a point where that resource will go away. I hope it isn't until the courts are back open. I hope that we still get the cooperation of the local law enforcement. I pay attention to a lot of the calls for service that are going on now. I'm assuming once businesses open up, certain ones draw more issues than others. That will probably create more calls for service from a law enforcement perspective, which will give more opportunities for arrest at the facility. But I would find it hard to believe that our population over the summer months could grow by 100 that rapidly. You know, and I was talking about with classifications this morning, if we go back to business as normal, I'm not saying we as in Androscoggin County Sheriff's Office, I'm saying society, I think you can reasonably expect our head count to rise back up to a level that it usually is probably by January or February.
This is an all-time low since I've been in office.
Well, and I get greedy because in the beginning when I saw it was happening, it's like if we can get it down to 90, it's gonna be no problem. Then depending on how much cooperation, because the district attorney, and I told him, I said, you appear to be working in progressive steps in continuing your efforts. Because you know, you recognize people when they're doing a good job, and clearly his office is. And you know, the whole video thing that they're doing with the courts, that's a lot of people involved. I even hate to, but I gotta give, you know, probation and parole some credit here too for, you know, they don't have to be doing this because the courts are somewhat closed. So, yeah, it's an all-time low. So I had told Major Shute at the beginning, I'm like, I bet you we can get it down to in the 70s. It's crazy. Now, this morning, I'm talking to my classification guy, I'm like, I want it in the 50s. But, you know, and it's not about letting out the criminals. It's about evaluating what we have. And it got to a point when I looked at our inmate population, when I exercised the early releases and when we did all these things and I saw what the district attorney's office was doing and the arrests not coming in because, you know, it was asked that, or looking for alternatives. When we evaluated, you know, the inmate population as it exists, and I hope I don't offend anybody with my opinion, but I called the district attorney and I said, as much as I'd like to see cases resolved, I don't think it's going to be easy. Because if I was the defendant with the charges they're here for, I wouldn't accept the deal that I'm being offered because there's lifelong consequences to have this on my record. And at the same time, if I was the district attorney, I wouldn't want to offer a deal to resolve the case because these are serious charges. So we had gotten to a point where the issues that people were in here for were not your low on the spectrum crimes. There were some serious, concerning things. And when you think about it, and when him and I had that conversation, because we talk regularly about what's happening and what changes can we make, and I'm telling you they're going through the disposition, we have 7 people in the past week and a half or so that have been sentenced to Department of Corrections time. I don't think we were wrong in, you know, and it's a public safety issue. You know, debt to society, whatever, but that's where we were at. It was literally the low-hanging fruit, the victimless, and I don't like saying victim because I believe, regardless, driving without a license, you can say it's a victimless crime, but is it? But when I was looking at it, really was, you know, when you're looking at 70 people in your facility and you're looking at the level of charges, I wouldn't want to release these individuals without going through the process. And I can see why both sides would have a hard time agreeing. So some of these hearings that they're having now, like today there was 3, some are contested, so there's not agreements. In some they're dealing with their probation violations, but they still have additional charges as a result too. So out of the 7, there's 2 that are sentenced to state time, but they still have more charges to resolve.
Now, is it safe to say because of the circumstances, our work release program is
That's
pretty much
close. Yeah,
done?
we actually, in the beginning, we traditionally had 12 people working in the kitchen. We have 6. We would do laundry 24 hours a day, 2 people to keep people busy, create 2-for-1s. That stopped. But at the point we are now, in dealing with the population we're dealing with the low number of sentenced people we have, because we still have some that are sentenced to county time. Most of our workers are pretrial, and it's harder to find workers that are suitable.
Right.
So, you know, that's a different issue that we can't be concerned about when we're looking at.
Yes, I understand.
But this morning I sent an email to the district attorney's office acknowledging their efforts and encouraging them, because there was some whispers, well, if the state's not going to take them, why do we want to go through all this to have the hearings? And I'm like, no, you need to do it for a number of reasons. And the district attorney agreed, and he asked me to send out an email, so, you know, because some of the staff were wondering too, there's a lot of effort, is it worthwhile while the court's closed? And there was actually a judge that had some concerns. It was more related to, if convicted, which good time will they have? So we're working with the state to make sure they get the state good time, and if this order expires mid-June, we should be able to transfer them. And then when I sent my request to the Commissioner of Corrections, I said, we're willing to honor everything, we don't want to overburden your intake staff and create social distancing, so we'll only bring 2 a day, figuring that's fair. We won't bring them all 2 at once, because I don't think this issue is going to go away anytime soon, but I think there's ways we can responsibly deal with it in every element of the field. So if 2 a day is suitable to them, because the same term is you don't want to be a hypocrite. So we know that once the jail is open, less restrictive, where the DA won't be there to call on every arrest that comes in, there's a feeling that there'll be a number of arrests that come in very rapidly for a while. And I don't want to be the guy that that says, hey, can you, moderation, still use alternatives, and be the same guy that transports 15 inmates to DOC and say, here you go, they're yours. Model of behavior, I guess you'd say. So that's why I said, and I've told my transport supervisor, and he actually agreed, it's reasonable. Every morning bring 2 down, once we're allowed to, until we get rid of them. It sounds bad, but that's the truth. Until we get rid of them all.
Right.
Does that answer your questions?
Yeah.
I don't know, you asked a lot of,
Yeah. I could definitely understand why the state wouldn't want to accepting more inmates into the prison right now.
I don't understand it at all.
No?
I think they have better capabilities, medical. They've given their staff wage increases, hazard pay it's called. They've released a lot of prisoners statewide where they have empty pods. We're a linear facility where we have limited opportunities for quarantine. We're bringing in a lot of people still, so that makes everybody else vulnerable. Where right now we've had 0 positive tests for inmates or officers, so it would be the ideal time to send them to a state facility
Yeah,
that has
yeah.
better capabilities. Because once we get in our facility, it's going to create a management issue. But I understand why they wouldn't want them, but I'm still accepting arrests from Lewiston, Auburn, Sabattis, Livermore Falls, Maine State Police, Mechanic Falls, and Chicago County Sheriff's Office. So I'm kind of conflicted. And at the same time, we've received 20% of our PPE requests where I've been told that they have enough PPE equipment to not only provide for their staff, but their inmate population. So while their most recent thing changes it a little bit, I think they're much better positioned to handle it than the majority of the counties would do. I don't mean to disagree with you, I'm just...
Yeah, that's fine. You mentioned something about testing, so has there been a number of tests done in Chicago County with our first responders and inmates?
We've had individuals that work here that have tested themselves, or a spouse has been tested out of concern. We have not had to test any of the inmate population this time. Well, how we're handling it is all new arrests that are coming in, new entries in the facility, they're quarantined into 2 sections of the jail for 14 days before they're moved into their inmate population. They come into the holding area, which has a separate ventilation system. If we need that, we put them in a less restrictive area. It's called community, and we try to spread them out, because it would do no good if you're in there for 9 days and you got 5 days to go, and bring somebody else in that has it, but hasn't quarantined for the appropriate period of time. So we're trying to keep that up so we can, keep track of who's going where before they're moved into the population. But it's a chance to see if they're showing symptoms. As we're learning more about this virus, apparently it's possible for somebody to be carrying it, have it, and I think Clover Manor is the most recent example where the majority of the people that are walking with it have no symptoms. So I'm a little confused there, but we're doing the best we can to manage.
I'm sure that we've all heard in the news, that an inmate in Wyndham, was diagnosed with COVID-19, and I'm just curious to know, if we have any insight as to what occurred in that facility and what we, can do to.
While waiting for this, my bet is, what we've said all along, if it gets introduced in our facility, we have 50-something employees that go home and come back. My bet would be that's where it will come from. And I don't know I can't speak to Wyndham's experience, but I would kind of think that that's probably, what they were saying on the 4:30 news tonight is the individual showed up at their facility March 3rd, I think was the date, or maybe it was May 3rd, anyway, they were from Somerset County. Somerset County had a low number as far as it goes, and I would imagine they were incarcerated at Somerset County facility who's had no issues. So I would say they got it while in state custody. I don't know if it's one of those community things, because it is Cumberland County who's had that, like Androscoggin County has, or if it was through another officer. What they reported on the news is how they handle it is where the individual was housed has been shut down and will be decontaminated. He's housed in another isolation unit until it's all resolved. And I guess they've been testing so many staff members a day, and 25, they offer testing to 25 inmates a day, but they don't force them, and some have refused to be tested. That's what I'm getting on the media for what it's worth.
Yeah, I was just curious to know, I mean, as you said, it would be difficult to, contain if it came to, our facility, just
Yeah.
because of the layout, so.
And how it is if
Concerning.
somebody, because you have manipulative behavior that comes in sometimes, and they make claims, but they're not showing any signs. Ironically, we offer them the masks, and they wear them, and we haven't had any issues there. So, an intox person comes in tonight, I've got the corona thinking that's their ticket out. Yeah, that's good here, wear this mask, and every time we bring you out of yourself or a booking process or whatever, you need to have it on, and the individuals have complied.
Thank you.
Madam
Uh,
Madam Chair.
Commissioner,
Thank you. A question, how long have you been practicing my understanding is that the jail has been, obviously, when people are taken in, so to speak, that they're kept separate from the general population for 14 days. Is that correct? And then how long has that been going on? Is that just 2 weeks ago? Is that?
Oh no, this is going on since,
Yeah, I remember you established this months ago that you were doing.
here's what we did, it had to work in steps, because our inmate population when they started was 160. So, working with maintenance, credit where credit's due. Anyway, we identified areas in the facility that had appropriate ventilation to deal with this. One area was a housing unit, and I don't remember what date it was, but I pretty much said, don't send anybody back down there, because that's where we put our trustees, because we're gonna need that. And I'd rather vacate that area now than vacate it when we need to, because it'll be dealing with a lot of stressors at the same time. So, once we got the head count low enough in the zones, we determined we found a cell block to put all of our trustees in, kitchen workers, laundry, and move them out of there into there. And of course, when we did that, it caused an uproar because they thought they were being moved because we had somebody in with the virus. So that's when I got to say, see, imagine if we did wait till we got somebody in. Anyway, so once that area was vacated, we had maintenance come in and do things that needed to be done. Some locks needed to be changed because of how it was run before. Some general maintenance that we kind of put the back burner on because it's not an area you need to be as concerned about as, say, maximum security. So Dave and his crew probably spent a week, taking care of that. Then we had it cleaned. Then we started expanding holding. They would move into there next. Combined time would be 14 days. And then from there, if they were still exhibiting no signs, they would get sent up to the normal zones as they were. And so I can't tell you when we actually got community empty, because it did take us some time to get the head count down. There was a lot of different things you had to consider, and the courts were involved. But I'd have to say you lose track of time during this. It's all a big corona blur. It's been about 4 weeks probably.
More than that, probably 6.
Yeah, it took about 3-4 weeks for us to get in a position to empty it, and that's what we've been utilizing. Thankfully, the arrests coming in have been way down.
yes.
Just one more thing. In the during the Corona blur, one of the counties, in their attempts to sort of digitize the justice system, had a little trouble with recording. It was a very isolated incident in Somerset County. They had trouble recording.
No, that was a phone, it's the reverse. If you're talking about, they recorded phone conversations with the lawyer and the individual that was incarcerated.
Right.
Is that what you're
Right.
talking about?
Yeah.
We use a different provider for that. We use Securus, and we have, I don't want to say it, state of the art. We've got latest and greatest. We've got better equipment through Securus with certainties than the vendor they were using. And I think predominantly throughout the state, Securus is used other than in Somerset County, which was somewhat surprising. The other thing in looking at how they did it, they're dependent on the inmate to provide the phone number to be blocked out. We work with the defense bar to get all the attorneys' numbers entered in. Like right now, Attorney James Warnick was the last one to provide to us all the numbers to remove from our system, so those things won't happen. Can I say with absolute certainty they won't? No, but we've done as much as we can independently without relying on somebody that comes in on a Friday night. You can tell them the rules, they can sign a sheet, but 3 weeks later they might forget that they did that, and might forget to turn in the attorney's phone number. We just assume not risk those things happening, because as you see from the Somerset case, it can affect their whole case. The other thing we do is typically the calls that you go through where you're looking for information with those, we don't handle them like Somerset did. It appeared from what I read in the paper that they grabbed all recordings and sent them to the DA's office. Traditionally with our agency and with the DA here, you're looking for specific communications with specific people, such as domestic violence. Did they contact the victim? So you're looking through calls to identify the number that should have been eliminated, but they could have gone to their neighbor's house to accept the call. So the sound of their voice or that, and that's probably a bad example, a harassment type thing or tampering with you're not just sending over the whole history and saying, all right, listen to whatever you want. You're like on a warrant for a phone, it's got to be specific to what you're trying to pull from. They handle these calls the same way. It's, hey, can you listen to see if they contacted the victim? We're not sending it to them for them to listen to 500 calls. And a lot of times when it comes into violation of bail conditions, which is the most request we have, there can be hours and hours and months of those calls. So we handle the information a little bit differently, but it's regulated and really differently with a different vendor that's a nationwide company. So I can't say that it won't happen, but it's less likely.
Sure, thank you.
I know you came to observe and we put you on the hot
And I
seat,
told
been
her.
asking you questions
She always agrees. She says,
nonstop.
you talk too much. And I said, but if I go, they're going to ask me questions.
Yes, it's true. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. You all set now, please? All right. Have a good night.
Okay, Dave, if you want to look on your computer, it's, if there's any comments from the public, not about any, the subject matter is open, not about any particular subject like earlier.
So the comment section is turned off, so nobody can type and have comments, and nobody has their hands up to ask questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to old business, policy for contacting an attorney. I'm going to, for this section, turn it over to the chairman of that subcommittee, Commissioner Kelly, but in preparation for that, do I hear a motion to take up this issue?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Kelly, it is your meeting.
Okay. Over the past several months, Commissioner Michael, Commissioner Ames, and myself have pooled our collective thoughts together to come up with a new policy for contacting the county attorney. That would, work better for everyone. And I will just point out two of the major changes. And the new policy is included in your packet. So feel free to address questions to any of the three of us, at the conclusion. But the first major change that I would like to highlight is the board will be notified at least 14 days from the date when services of the county attorney were sought, and shall receive complete and accurate documentation of the request and any counsel given, and will be kept apprised of any follow-up requests to or replies from the attorney. The second notable change is that the said commissioner will be responsible for the cost of all legal services acquired without approval of the board, unless the board subsequently agrees to approve said services. Those are the two major changes that we made to the policy. If anyone has any questions, feel free to address Commissioner Michael or Commissioner Ames or myself. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Medore had his hand up, then next will be Commissioner Larry.
Just curious, there's a couple of things that I was a little curious about. So I see that there's the committee, right, that did this, and then there's Commissioner Larry's proposal. I presume that one is.
That's his initial proposal, and then there's the one that we wrote together.
Okay. What were the reasons behind putting? This is probably my secondary concern. I'll talk about my first one next, because this was just kind of curiosity. What is the reasoning behind the statement about this policy by no way limits the right of any commissioner or staff to seek services of an attorney that will not be billed by the county? And it does not, this is the part that was really odd to me, nor does it limit or affect the attorney-client privileges.
Commissioner Michael?
That was to make it clear that in no way were we seeking to infringe on any commissioner's right to seek an attorney and to have a basic client-attorney arrangement with that attorney. We wanted to make sure there was no misunderstanding that we were infringing on that in any way.
Okay. My thought was just, it seems like a given to me that the county wouldn't be interfering with an attorney-client privilege, but like my ability to contact an attorney. I think that's a given. So I'm not necessarily seeing it necessary in here, and I don't think it hurts, but...
Yeah, we can't assume that anything is a given. It's good to have it in writing, I believe.
Yeah, but that is a tried and true and validated thing, that the client-attorney privilege. And so it kind of makes me feel like it's being in here that maybe some people feel like we could do that if we're saying that we're not. Anyway, the really only big concern that I have with this is that there are situations in which Larry or the administrator ought to be able to contact an attorney, and I can, I do think we ought to be told about it, but I can definitely see that there being like personnel issues, or like when we had that FOA request about personnel records, or pieces of personnel records that, I don't want us to tie his hands when it is in our best interest to have him be able to do that, even if it's something small. I know that, we're not saying that that's not going to happen, but, since I've been here, I've seen that our, involvement in the administration or what's going on at the county has been sort of diminished over time, and kind of making this pretty pointed about it makes me feel like, you know, it's kind of us losing just a little bit more. So I feel like he deserves to be able to contact an attorney for one reason or another. You know, not to be contemplating litigation or anything without us, but for clarification of things, because there's a lot that goes on that we're not involved in, and maybe we shouldn't be involved in, such as maybe it's a conflict of interest with a commissioner about something like a contract. You know, I wouldn't want him, I don't know, I just don't feel like if it's something really small and minor that, but it could be a big deal, that we should be involved with it. So that's my big concern, is that I don't want to tie our administrators' hands for that.
Commissioner Larry, I think you had a...
Madam Chair?
Can I take Commissioner Larry first, then get right back to you, Commissioner Michaels?
I'll concede.
Oh, he'd like concede for you to go first? Commissioner Michaels? Commissioner,
Me or Isaiah?
Yes, you.
you.
Me.
Yes, you. Commissioner Michael?
The right for the administrator to pursue legal matters has been kept intact. The only thing we added was that a majority of the elected Board of County Commissioners may also share that role, in addition to the chair and the administrator, which were in the policy previously. And we asked that the administrator notify us at least 14 days from the date when the services are initiated, and that was partly to protect client attorney privileges that we talked about at a previous meeting. So if the administrator needs additional time or some exception, I would think he could come to the board and we would be reasonable. So I hope we can continue and move on with this. It was intended to not tie the administrator's hands, but give the board a little bit more notification, and also make it clear that the board can initiate action itself. And ultimately, the board can change the direction of attorney and legal matters ultimately. So this is an empower the board matter, but it does not disempower the administrator. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I took the meeting back over from you.
Oh, no,
Take it.
you're fine. No, you're fine.
Commissioner Larry?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Basically, this does give the authority back to the board on where legal matters go. This does limit the power of the administrator to a degree in following legal counsel. In boards that I have seen, directors do not typically go very far without getting permission to continue on with seeking legal counsel, because that is, legal counsel ends up running along with lawsuits and other issues that can be really thorny and touchy. I do have some concerns regarding making sure that we do reduce the firewall between if there is a personnel issue that we need to be able to handle, what's the right word, basically handle without having seen the information before. I am okay with that. What I want to avoid is commissioners being able to request information from the administrator, bypassing the administrator, or bypassing the board, as the old policy mainly was the intention of, and then being able to bring that information up when it suited them. So I want to make sure that if the administrator is doing stuff for personnel or issues that are pursuant to their role, I would rather see the firewall there. I don't want to see us paying people to sue us, if that is something that we're able to limit by law. Somebody is more than welcome to hire their own attorney and sue us as much as they want, though I certainly hope they don't. At the same time, I want to make sure if there's something in our jurisdiction that no commissioner can run to the administrator or run to a board chair and not have, and not share that information with the rest of the commission. That is antithetical to freedom, it's antithetical to due process and fair treatment. Commissioner Madore has raised this point before, this real desire to be able to check on people clandestinely and not
What are you
find out.
talking about?
Allow me to finish.
Finish, and
Commissioner Madore,
I'll
is you mentioned
give you a
before the
chance if you'd
conflict
like
of
to.
interest and wanting to be able to allow the administrator to look into commissioners. The administrator works on.
No, Chair, please,
Madam Chair.
this is, don't damage my name with your attempt to do this. If you want to talk about this policy, talk about this policy. Don't talk bad about me. I'm tired of your fetish about me, and you're on notice. And so, if you want to talk about the substance of this, then talk about the substance of this. Don't try to damage my name by saying something about clandestine surveillance of people. That is so wrong, and it's against what we should be, the code of conduct that we should be having at this meeting. And so please, you're on notice that I'm tired of you attacking me, whether it's in public or in here. So
Madam
please.
Chairman.
Go
Madam
right,
Chairman, point of order.
go ahead,
I'll state my
Commissioner
point of
Michael?
order.
Yes.
It's correct, no board member should question the motives of any other board member, because no matter what we think, we do not understand and know what the motives are. So such conversation should be carefully couched in addressing the issues before us and the merits of those issues, and not the intentions behind anyone's actions. You can address the actions, but we should be careful about adding assessments onto those, motives onto the actions.
Sure, Madam Chair.
Thank you,
May I
Commissioner
clarify?
Michaels. I would like us to keep right to the policy. If you have comments that you'd like to make at discussion time, fine, but let's stick to the policy so we can get a vote up or down
Yes,
on the
this
policy.
is pursuant to the policy. I will re-clarify, I will retract the words clandestine.
Is this about the policy or Commissioner
I'm
Madore?
trying to retract what I was saying, explain, there is logic that was given, and there is a full right of commissioners in discussion to either agree with that logic or to give other points. Commissioner Madore has stated, I'll retract my statements before and I'll restate them. Commissioner Madore has stated that the administrator should be able to find out about conflict of interest issues and with the commissioner. That is basically, as far as I recall, accurate. No commissioner should not, any commissioner, there is a procedure in the bylaws for conflicts of interest, so there is no need for the administrator to be able to check on commissioners on conflicts of interest. If there is an issue, commissioners may raise that point, and commissioners have a responsibility to disclose that. So there is no need to give that sort of power over someone that works under the commission to then be able to check on individual commissioners. That's very dangerous, and I don't want to see something like that enabled. So I'm very concerned about that issue being raised. That should not be happening. Administrator Post handles personnel issues. We deal with them if somebody wants to complain about how they've been treated at a certain time, and we're to keep that firewall. But if there's something that involves a commission, all commissioners should know about it, and there's no impugning of motives whatsoever. It's just straight facts. Every commissioner should know what's going on. No one should be kept in the dark, and that's more than fair.
Well, I'm going to ask this. Let's discuss the policy and let's let every commissioner speak for themselves and no one speak for another commissioner or paraphrase what they've said or haven't said. And we're all here. We all have a voice. We can all speak for ourselves. We don't really need other people to speak for us. So, other comments? Did you have other comments? I knew you had your hand up before.
There is nothing wrong. I was interrupted, and we talked about decorum.
That's why I came back to you. Did you have more comment about the?
But what I'm what I would like to point out is that for us to have a civil discussion, we should be able to raise points and counterpoints and explain whether that is actually a valid mode to go or not. That's how we come to discussions, and come to an agreement. This policy is much better than what it was in the past, but we still need to make sure that we put the firewall between staff and personnel issues and areas that are under the administrator's purview, and make sure that at the same time, the administrator is not given the ability to oversee the commission. When it's in the commission's jurisdiction, it should stay there, and we should have the authority to stop that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for,
I just want to say, I foresee a, sorry, were you?
no, yeah, I was just mumbling on. Go ahead.
I foresee sometime in the future that, and listen, this isn't about me, and I don't think it's about me, and I don't care about that. But I do foresee a time in the future where we're going to have someone who's sitting in Larry's chair who's not as experienced as he is, and that they may more frequently need a legal opinion. And it's really more consequential with towns, I think. But we are, all the things that we do are really following statute, and so I foresee that someday in the future there will be a need for that more. And I can't ever see that many of those things would be emergencies, so I wouldn't want them to feel like they should just make a decision because they have to, or they feel like they can't contact an attorney because it's not an emergency. And from my experience with working with other towns, this policy is sort of an outlier in terms of the way they do the administration with that in terms of contacting an attorney. So I really do worry about that. I'm not certain, that there really is a problem with the other one, more than just there was an instance where there was a problem with action maybe, but I don't really see a problem with the policy. We really, before a lot of us started, there was just tens of thousands of lawyer fees, and commissioners would call the attorneys, and like individual commissioners would call the attorney and rack up a lot of money in legal fees, and that was pretty clearly stopped. And so I haven't really seen there be a problem, and so with any of that, I do think Larry should contact an attorney more than he does, like with this latest thing with the FOA request of the personnel issues. But I'm sure he made the right decision about it. But some things are really sensitive and not necessarily emergent. So that's just my concern. This is an outlier. So anyway.
Any other questions for Commissioner Kelly or members of that committee?
Commissioner Ames, do you have anything you'd like to say about it?
No, I'm happy with it.
Are we ready to call for a vote?
Madam Chair, I would like to apologize for my first statement, which included the clandestine, but I will stand by the right of commissioners to bring contradictory statements that point out some of the inconsistencies or some of the reasons for changing things around, or contradictions that are being raised by other commissioners. That is not inappropriate. Thank you.
Just one last thing. If you're bringing up contradictory, if you think a commissioner is being contradictory and you want to bring it up to prove a point, I think that's outside of the code of conduct of this. It's not about the substance of this. And I don't know why, if we're talking about something, it should be about this. It should be about the merits of this, why we want to do it, the reasoning behind it. It's not about people or individuals or anything else like that. And I don't think any of us really should be quoting anybody else in these meetings because it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant and it's against the code of conduct. And what I want is, I know that in my perspective, I love to debate things, and it's about the merit of what you're talking about. It's not about saying, characterizing what they're saying as something. It's about the merits of the policy that you're talking about. And so if you're talking about them or quoting them, it's really not about the policy or having a debate anymore. It's maybe about ego or something. I don't know. But
Let's call the question. I want to be clear about the question we're calling. It's the proposed ad hoc committee amendment 01. So is that the proposal, Commissioner Larry's proposal?
No.
In addition?
No, it's not.
Could you clarify what we're voting on?
This is, Commissioner Larry's proposal is included just, as reference, but
Okay.
it's not his. It's the one that we put together.
So what we're voting on is the proposed ad hoc committee?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Is everyone's clear on what you're voting on? I just don't want any misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And let me make notes in that to give to Sandy.
That other copy was just there for reference.
Madam Chair, I'd like to propose the amendment to this policy, please.
Okay. All right. If you'd speak slowly so I can
Sure.
get it down.
And I can write it down because that is a change, that is a motion. Okay, I'd like to add on the second to last paragraph, where it says, nor does it limit or affect the attorney-client privileges of any commissioner, administrator, or staff member, comma, with their own private attorney, just to clarify that it's not with the county attorney.
I can't get that fast.
I don't see a
Do you-
problem with that.
What are the chances you have that word for, I know on the tape,
I actually wrote it down, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
thank you.
Because motions can be required to be in writing.
on the tapes many times we can't.
Commissioner
Sure,
Michael,
I'll say
did
it
you hear
again
that?
if you like.
Commissioner Michael, did you hear that amendment?
And some of it, can you tell me how that would read with your amendment?
Sure. Madam, sure.
Yes, go ahead.
It's the second to last paragraph, last sentence. It says, currently it just says, nor does it limit or affect the attorney-client privileges of any commissioner, administrator, or staff member, period. I'm crossing out the period on the end of that and saying, comma, because you want the whole thing. Nor does it limit or affect the attorney-client privileges of any commissioner, administrator, or staff member, comma, with their own private attorney.
I'm fine with that. I believe, I'm done. I believe just Commissioner Roy has a question.
Go right ahead, Commissioner Roy.
Can we change the word effect to affect?
Okay, let me ask you this. Commissioner Larry, would you combine that so we don't have two motions on the table? Would you combine that with your
I'm going to,
motion?
if I can just look at which line.
Nor does it
Same
limit
sentence.
or affect.
Oh, yes. That's,
Two.
okay, so Madam Chair, I've crossed that out. And put an A instead of E, nor does it limit or affect the attorney-client privileges of any commissioner, administrator, or staff member, comma, with their own private attorney, period. And with the, I can hand that over to you when.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I'm sure I did not
Madam
get it all
Chair.
word for word. Yes, sir. Commissioner Michaels.
We could change the word to infect. All right, I'll ask you that.
Sure. Happy to. Okay, so we're combining those two changes together, and what you're agreeable to that,
Sure, it just
Commissioner
does need a
Larry?
second though for
Yes,
procedure.
I'm looking for a second for
Second.
that.
Seconded.
Terry Kelly. And so first, let's vote on adding those two changes to the present policy. Not the policy, adding those changes. All in favor of adding those two changes to the policy?
Michael Boucher,
Okay. Okay. And now on to the bigger question, adopting the policy, and I believe we have a motion and a second on that, pretty sure. Let me go back, check. It's been a little while. Yes, we do. So I'm all in favor of adopting this new policy as presented by the committee.
Michael Boucher.
Okay, very good. Okay, thank you. Moving on to discussion items, I'll start out. Dave, Cody, you know I did a little unnecessary walk around. You and I know what that was all about. And I just want to tell you, the grounds look fantastic. It's all freshly mulched and looks really well cared for. It's about as nice as I've ever seen it.
Thank you.
And you put a lot of work into that. I can see
Actually, I
that.
did nothing to it. My crew did all the
No,
work.
just take the credit. Just go ahead and take the credit. It looks really nice because I got a close-up view of all of it, walking all the paths like I did by accident. So, discussion items, other. Yes, sir.
Can we add a fourth leg to the cougar on our flag?
That would be nice.
Will that be another
I mean,
$100?
Oh,
You know,
yeah,
of
I
these,
know, I
Of
know.
these important things, I find that to be the most important.
You don't like it being hokey?
No.
You know, we probably ought to look at the drawing that we actually gave them and see if that was a mistake on whose end. I mean, if it was the,
I could get a
if
yellow
it was the
marker and just
printers,
write
they
it down.
probably ought to reprint it for us. Let me take a note about that. I do, you know, ever since
Because I'm
someone
just looking
pointed,
at it the entire night, I'm just like, oh.
ever since someone pointed that out to us, it is the thing that jumps off the flag at me now.
And I'm sure that, you know, our members of the public will notice it as well.
I never noticed it until it was pointed out to us, and
Yeah.
then now it's the thing that
Yeah,
I,
now it's the glare.
now it's the glaring
Yeah.
thing. Oh, that's too bad. Okay, thank you for that. Any other discussion items?
Sure, Madam Chair. I'd like to propose that we request as a commission, it is up to the administrator to put together the budget initially. I do feel it is fair for us to encourage him to look at every opportunity to cut spending. I see in his administrator's report, he has done some of that already with some of the probate work, I believe, on the floor. And I wanted to just encourage him to find as much as we can, cut spending as much as possible in order to alleviate the effects the towns, I think, are going to be pretty, very bad. I already talked to my own town, and they've made cuts on non-essential staff or cut hours. So I want to do what we can to reduce spending as much as possible. I realize we have to feed the inmates, but there are limits on other areas that we can, really would encourage us to really sharpen our pencils this year and see what we can do, including non-essential requests for money going outside the county.
Okay, very good. Any other discussion items? Future agenda items?
Sure.
Yes, sir.
I was waiting for if anybody else is going to speak for it. I'd like to, since it's been mentioned a lot, I'd like to look at finding ways to put on the next, or for us to find out how we can open up the county building again, and looking at agenda items. We can discuss that.
You want that down on agenda items?
Yes.
Isn't it opening on June
Opens
1st?
June 1st, it'll be open for our next
Okay.
meeting.
Good.
Yeah, that's what
Good.
was mentioned earlier
Yeah,
tonight.
it'll be open for
Okay.
our next
Great.
meeting.
Open for business.
still have people on, right?
Yeah, I
No.
think we,
In total, 7 participants. We have
Sharon,
2.
Steve Sherlock's hanging in there with us.
Besides
He's the
ourselves.
reporter. Okay, if there's no other items, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So move.
Terry Kelly and Mary, all in favor? Thank you very much.
Would you all need to sign the warrants?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Enjoy it out there, John.
Drive safe.
I don't feel like you understand how serious it is for you to